All right. So this is blogging and podcasting with Evernote, and I thought I would cover sort of three areas: organizing, collaborating, publishing with Evernote. And I'm going to primarily focus on podcasting here because that makes a little bit more sense for the group. But if you have any questions about blogging, by all means, it's sort of one and the same. I sort of briefly prepared these slides, so forgive any detriment to your knowledge here. So I'll start off with a story. So I got started in the podcasting world because I started listening to podcasts a long time ago, and I got really interested in the idea of being able to be out of sync with terrestrial radio and still gain information. And so back in about 2003, 2004, I knew podcasting was something of interest, and then I had the luxury in 2011 to get this really great idea that I would create these short snippets. So I'm a productivity enthusiast. Some might call me a productivity geek, but I thought, well, it'd be really cool if I actually, for my own purposes, produce these little 2-minute snippets of audio that would remind me about productivity principles that I thought were really important to myself. This was purely self-interest. So I went out there and I started recording these audio points, and I run the two largest getting things done or productivity meetups in the United States, one in DC and one in New York City. And some of the folks there, they said, hey, would you mind publishing these items? And I thought, well, okay, sure, I'll netcast it. I'll throw it into a podcast and then you guys can download it. Well, over the course of a couple of years, and as you can see by the statistics that I just pulled up this morning, I've had about 2.16 million downloads, and it just sort of exploded in its own right, and I've never really tried. As you could probably see by the chart here, I haven't published in a couple months, for example. I just publish whenever I want to. I put out items. I'm roughly around episode 90-something, so I'll hit 100 soon. And so ProdPod was born just out of my own interest in being able to do that. And then along came this, and Productivity Book Group is a podcast where it's basically a virtual book club. So I get together with people. Anyone is welcome to read the book of the month. We get together and we basically talk about a productivity book. And I choose all the books. I'm pretty monarchical about it. People make suggestions. I go ahead and do that. And as you can see, it's a much smaller downloadership, readership, subscribership. But the whole idea behind Productivity Book Group is to have a very tight-knit community of people who go ahead and listen to podcasts. So I've always been interested in the world and interested in the field, and so I was sort of thrust into this world of doing all that. In the process of that, I am a productivity coach and a consultant to small businesses primarily who want to learn about how to use web, mobile, social technologies in order to market and manage their businesses. And so in 2015, I became one of a cohort that became an Evernote Certified Consultant. So I became an Evernote Certified Consultant in 2015, and I thought it was just a great ability to offer to small businesses new tools that they could use. And Evernote, for those of you who don't know, is this great note-taking software, and it's a robust tool that allows you to be able to integrate with dozens and dozens of other tools out there. And you might think of a similar technology software like Microsoft's OneNote, and some people sometimes relate this to Google Keep, but it's really not. And so I became an Evernote Certified Consultant, and it's been really fun learning more about Evernote and its ways in which you can utilize it in all kinds of ways. And one of those is blogging and podcasting. For those of you who don't know me, I'm also one of the 30 Google Small Business Advisors. So Google Small Business, which is the office that helps small businesses at Google, I'm one of the 30 Small Business Advisors, and my specialty, of course, is productivity. And so we're available for free. If you just want to go over to the advertiser community on Google+, you'll see the Google Small Business section. If you have any questions about Google, small business, ask the questions, and we are there to answer those questions for you. I also happen to be a Hootsuite brand ambassador, so I know the prior gentleman was talking about Hootsuite and so forth, so if you have any questions about social media, I'm happy to answer those as well. So Evernote itself has approximately 200 million users as of its last public notification of its user base, and approximately 25% of those are US-based users, so we have about 50 million active users in the States. And so Evernote's a very, very large product, and we know that about 70% of those people are using Evernote for professional purposes. So what I love about Evernote is that I usually know another Evernote user in almost every client that I work with, right? There's always someone who's used it and they love it or hate it, right? And I actually really like that because I love people who love it, and I love to convert people who hate it to loving it because it's always a matter of not understanding how the tool works or even understanding its limitations, right? So if I can help someone understand that something can give you 80% of the benefit of utilizing it, and there are many other people who are also utilizing that tool, then you're likely going to be able to get the best of value out of that tool. If you can only marginally improve their world by 20%, right, sort of playing on Pareto principles, the Pareto principle, you're really not going to get very much out of that person. So I really love that reality that we all are seemingly using it. Evernote is a really flexible product, and as Evernote likes to talk about it as sort of the modern workspace because of its ability to not only integrate with so many things, but it's just an easy product that works across many different platforms. So you can find Evernote on your mobile phone, you can find it on your tablet, you can find it on a laptop or a desktop computer, you can find it on Windows and Mac, and while not official products, you can get an Evernote Linux client as well and utilize Evernote there. And where you can't, you can use Evernote Web, which is the desktop browser version of Evernote. A little bit more limited, but still a very robust product itself. Evernote comes in 4 different flavors. 3 of them are on screen. Evernote comes in a basic product, and that's a free product that Evernote provides you with the ability to use, pretty much 80% of what Evernote can do, all there in a free product. If you go to evernote.com, you can go ahead and sign up for that. Then Evernote steps you up to Plus. Plus gives you a more broadband in terms of how much you can upload monthly. And so Evernote itself is designed around how much you upload monthly, not how much storage is in Evernote. So where you would have like a Dropbox or a Google Drive that says you have 5 gigabytes of allotment, and that's all you can hold in there ever without paying more in order to have more access. Evernote doesn't do that. They say how much are you uploading monthly, and no matter how much you have uploaded, that's not the allotment that they care about. You could have 60, 90, 100 gigabytes of data in there. It's only what you're uploading that really matters to them. So you get higher monthly uploads, and you get to sync across more than 2 devices. So with Evernote Basic, you are limited to the number of devices you're on. Then we go up to Premium. Premium is basically the unlimited version of Evernote, if you want to call it that, but there are limitations even to that. But pretty much, if you are a power user of Evernote, you would go to a premium version. And so premium versions come with either the standalone version here or with a bundled sort of perspective with a product called Evernote Business. And Evernote Business is the tool that Evernoters use when they are running an entire company, and using Evernote with that. So as an Evernote Business Administrator, you are then allowed to create accounts underneath yourself, and every person who has an Evernote account under an Evernote Business Plan also is an Evernote Premium user, okay? And so you get paired up with that as well. So you get all the benefits of Evernote Premium and then access to collaborative notebooks and all kinds of other kinds of things. The Evernote Business is primarily for the business trying to control their information and having shared notebooks within this area Evernote calls the library. Okay, so that's what that's all about. So what I really love about Evernote, and this is going to keep bothering me, so I'm just going to get in front of it. So Evernote is something that just allows you to be able to capture anything, anywhere, okay? And probably there should be an asterisk there about anything because you can't capture anything, but almost everything that you would want to capture. And you could do it across your mobile. There goes a mock-up of the Nexus 5, and you can capture directly in your mobile phone, and you can capture on your tablet or phone in any way, shape, or form. And it can capture everything. So you can capture audio. You can take photographs. You can take a handwritten page in a notebook and capture that. And the beauty of Evernote is that it then scans that page or piece of document or text and then indexes that information so that you're able to search across all of those, whether it be an image of something or a PDF or text. It's going to look across that to be able to pull that information together for you. So it's a very powerful tool in its ability to go ahead and do that. It also has the ability to put almost any file in there. So you can take a code snippet and throw that in there. You can take an audio file, small video files, the native video file. You can actually put them into Evernote it just goes up to the limit of the size of the storage of that particular note. So Evernote has specific storage limits for both the note and how much you can upload every month. So it just depends on the size of those things. But if you're in a meeting and you want to take notes but also record the audio of the note, it's easy. You just open up your computer, turn on the audio note, it starts recording the audio of the meeting, and you can take notes as you go through it. So very, very simple and seamless way in which you can capture a lot of stuff. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. Next up is the ability to scan all kinds of documentation, and I'll talk about this in a little bit more, but specifically, Evernote has created, built into the application, a deep integration with LinkedIn. And so what Evernote does is, with any account that's a Plus or more, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's Evernote Plus and Premium or above plans, you actually have access to link your LinkedIn account. You scan your business card, and literally scanning the business card is as simple as placing it on a contrast background, opening up Evernote. It automatically recognizes that it's a business card, scans the business card, lifts the text from the business card, identifies it as someone on LinkedIn or not, and then pulls that data into a contact record within Evernote as a new note. You get to make sure all that information is correct. You can add notes and then save it, and now that person's captured into your contacts and is linked to a LinkedIn profile. So it's a very, very deep integration. You can force it then to create a new contact record on your phone, so it has the ability to go ahead and do that as well. So lots of really, really powerful tools. And again, it can do document scanning and all kinds of other fun things. Really, this depends on the quality of your phone. So just be aware that if you have a phone with not so great a processor or not so great a camera, you're going to have some issues. But otherwise, you can capture a lot of stuff in there. And so I really like it for the business card scanning just by itself. All right, next is it can clip web pages, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit as well. But you have the ability to go ahead and use your browser as a primary capture point across many different browsers. So from Safari to Chrome to Firefox and Microsoft Edge and Internet Explorer, you can go ahead and just grab all of those kinds of things out of there. Evernote also has now an Evernote Outlook clipper, so you're allowed to grab email from Outlook and drag those into Evernote as well. So as you're collaborating in a podcast environment and really wanting to work with people, you have the ability to really capture almost in every capacity from mobile to desktop. Evernote has this really wonderful feature called Context, and those, again, for Plus and Premium, I believe, users only, you get the ability to actually find new information. It resurrects information both from the web, but also from your own notes. So I tend to categorize Evernote as my extended mind. Okay, and there's a whole community of people that sort of talk about this idea of extension of the mind. That is that your brain is bad for holding ideas. It's really good for having ideas and processing information. We are cognitive creatures who are really bad at memory, okay? So what Evernote does for me is it allows me to just externalize my mind, and now it's my database of information. I don't need to remember very much other than to know to look to Evernote for the things that I need. And context is one of those things that's really powerful. So if I'm looking at a note and it says, oh, I've got a note here within a meeting, meeting notes with Alexander Rose, it can go ahead and find that LinkedIn profile and summon it for me so that I'm aware that he has a LinkedIn profile, and now I can see who he's the executive director of and all kinds of other information. It looks across several other databases, including the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and others, for being able to surface that information and display it to you for things. So if you're researching for your blog or podcast, just by putting a couple of search terms in your own notes, Evernote's going to pull that information in for you. So it can be very, very useful. It's actually the gentleman who walked out. He was sitting here, and he's looking for you.
Oh.
Yeah.
He's the one who did this session yesterday. I'm trying to remember. Oh, okay.
There you go.
He's here? Oh, all right.
He's walking around, yeah. And so the great part is, as you can see here, this found, from context, the feature found this Wall Street Journal article, and then you can basically open it up, and if you want to, you can immediately save that article into Evernote, into the notebook that you're in. So in a lot of ways, it's like sort of like a little mini research assistant. As you're doing more research and you put more data into Evernote, Evernote gets smarter about the things that you want, and it's able to then present it for you for pulling into Evernote in that way. Evernote also has WorkChat. WorkChat is a very simple mechanism for being able to have conversations in a collaborative environment and then sharing notes about, about that conversation, or sharing notes about, having conversation about a note that you're sharing. This is very, very simple, and I mean simple. Do not attempt to make this your Slack or anything else like that. This is literally for simple sharing and simple conversation. It's not a WhatsApp, it's not any of those things. And people who tend to try and use them as such fail at it, and they get angry at Evernote, and it's not Evernote's fault. Evernote's work chat is just for simple sharing of messages and simple sharing of notes. Do not try to make it more, okay? It will really, really frustrate you. So what it does is, at least on the desktop version here, you can see it gives you this little pop-up window where you can go ahead and share a note. This blue link right here is a note that Phil Libin, who's the former CEO, has shared with one of his staffers, and then they can just basically have a quick conversation about that particular note. All right, so note that these conversations are not captured inside the body of the note. They are its own separate independent conversation thread. When this chat is deleted, if it were to be deleted, it goes bye-bye. It does not exist anymore, okay? So don't reach out to Evernote support and say, oh my gosh, I had this thread and we put all this great information in the thread and then we deleted the conversation, now it's gone. It is really, truly gone, sorry. If you want real content, put them in the notes. This is a simple chat thread. This is not for tracking and organizing and those kinds of things. It's literally just to say, hey, did you get it? Yes, great, all right, bye. That's all it's for, okay? All right, Evernote has a suite of other products beyond just the Evernote app, and I think a lot of people forget that it has these tools or don't know that they do, so I like to cover them really quickly. Scannable is my favorite of the other Evernote products. If you're on iOS, Scannable is a scanning tool, and so instead of scanning using the Evernote app itself, you have a dedicated app to scanning. So if you're on iOS, like I said, you're capable of then opening up the Scannable app. It automatically engages the camera for your phone, and it automatically detects whatever document it's looking at. So whether you open it up and there's a business card on the table, if you open it up and there's a sheet of paper or a book that's open, Evernote Scannable goes ahead and identifies what that sheet is, and then is able to scan it in the proper format, decide on whether it should be color, should be non-color, be black and white, or if it should be rendered as a business card, and that data should be lifted from it. Okay, so it automatically does all that stuff for you. It then synchronizes with your Evernote account and puts that stuff in an Evernote notebook that you've chosen. Sketch is a markup tool. It allows you to annotate either PDFs or images that are in your account, and then that, again, also synchronizes with Evernote. A lot of the functions that Sketch once had as a standalone app, notice I put Mac only, because Sketch, all of this, most of it, is now built into the Evernote app itself. So all the things that Sketch does, if you have a Windows computer or if you have a tablet or something else, you can likely do everything I'm talking about here using the Evernote app. However, if you are on your Mac and you want to just have a tool just for annotating, Sketch is a really great tool. The web clipper I've already talked about, and I'll show you that in a little bit. And then penultimate is the iPad-only version of sort of a Moleskine. It's a high-end application built for taking handwritten notes on a digital screen, and that stuff is then again translated into an Evernote note. Okay? Very, very powerful tool. So this is Scannable in action. As I showed you, you can go ahead and look at a document, literally just put it on the table, and it automatically identifies the document. You'll see it panning over it, identifying the edges of the document, and then it'll automatically capture that and turn that into whatever it is. Notice it can take multiple pages at one time, so you can scan an entire report. Just keep turning pages over, having it look at it, it'll auto-scan it, turn over the page, it'll auto-scan, and just keep going. So it can be a very, very quick workflow, especially if you're dealing with, say you have a podcast about something that's historical reference and you're looking at microfiche or other kinds of things, or you're in the library and looking at newspaper articles, you can go ahead and quickly and easily scan those documents and move on with your day. The web clipper is a very, very powerful tool with its own set of limitations, but for the most part, I really love the web clipper because of this function here. This little pop-up window, pretty much in every browser, it's pretty similar in most browsers. I just want to go through this because this is really, really cool stuff. So if you come to a web page, right, you just, the Wall Street Journal, this would not appear, but you go to a specific article on the Wall Street Journal's website, and what it does is it automatically identifies the title. It pulls that from the meta tags in the HTML, and it identifies the title and it auto-titles it there. You can, of course, change that title to whatever you'd like to allow it to be keyword-rich for finding later and to be what you want it to be. From this perspective, you then get to clip it in different formats. And so the different formats are article. Article basically is, it identifies the HTML code that identifies the body of the article, and you're then given that sort of, code intact. And then the one that's displayed on screen here is what's called simplified article. And what that does is it actually exempts all of the CSS associated with it. So in the body tag of the article on the web page, it says what's in the body. Let's strip out the CSS and just make it all plain text with normal HTML tags, basically standard HTML. So you can see that the title page gets an H1 tag. This gets an H2, and then all that stuff going down. But it retains links and other things. Okay, so even though you're using and stripping out things, you're still keeping some of the really good stuff. But sometimes a page just doesn't look right because a website will have like JavaScript and some Ajax, this and that, sort of overlaying the page, and it kind of mucks up the ability for you to be able to capture the real data you want. Evernote gives you this ability to override that and just use a simplified look. Full page is basically looking at the entire page, and it just downloads. It pulls in as much of the HTML as it can that's rendered in your browser. It is not going to be perfect, folks. So if someone has a very complex CSS structure, or if they have nested CSS or CSS that's external to the site and otherwise, it creates all kinds of problems for Evernote to be able to render that. So don't expect a full page to always look proper. Really you have to play with the different views, and literally you can live click through these. So you can just click through and see which one looks best for you and then pull the one there. Bookmark creates literally a bookmark. It takes the title of the page and then the meta description from the HTML code again, and gives you a link to the page and creates this little tiny note that's just a link out to it. You're capable of always adding your own notes. That's the add remark here. You can just add your own notes and own tag and choose a notebook. And then finally, screenshot. So if you absolutely need exactly what's on screen to look exactly the way you want it to, you can just have Evernote screenshot it. And so it will look exactly as it is. Now it doesn't go ahead and pan down and screenshot the entire page. It will literally just take what's on and visible on the screen. There are other tools that I can explain that do that for you, so let me know if that's the case. Organizing, you can go ahead and choose notebooks here. So if you have multiple notebooks you want to share to, so like I would recommend having a reference folder, a reference notebook in your Evernote account specifically for your podcast or blog, and you would go ahead and add this to your reference. Or if it's for a specific podcast episode, you would then add it to your account and then go ahead and copy and paste it into that particular relevant note. Tags, there's many ways in which you can organize with tags, and I'll talk about that when I get to organizing. You can add your own notes, and this is your options button where you can log in and out of your Evernote account and change the way in which this web clipper works. But this is a very powerful tool, so just get used to working with and around it, and you'll be pretty happy with the tool in general.
The thing I love about that tool is 9 times out of 10 it'll guess what notebook it wants to go to,
yes.
And it's usually right.
Yeah, so it has auto-filing turned on, and so the things you need to know about auto-filing is that when you turn auto-filing on, it not only identifies for purposes of this functionality of deciding, sort of guessing where it should go and putting that into the appropriate notebook, but it's also connected to the way in which you email documents into Evernote as well. So there's a little bit of connection there in terms of learning. And they're independent features, I think, but you're capable of deciding on those too. But yeah, the more you put in Evernote and the more you use the tools, the better it knows about you. Penultimate, I already explained, but these are basically, you take notes, you can write, you can draw, you can do all kinds of really cool stuff, but if you're really into handwritten notes, you can go ahead and engage with Penultimate, and it's a great product for that. Evernote has something called the App Center, which used to be called the Evernote Market, and so what this does, I'm sorry, the Evernote Trunk, so it used to be called the Trunk. And so the Evernote App Center is basically where you can integrate with all kinds of other products. For example, New York Times Cooking, this is a cookbook, and every time you go to the New York Times Cooking site, you can go ahead and literally lift recipes directly out and it automatically synchronizes to Evernote. There's literally a big green button that says Save to Evernote on the New York Times website, and it just pulls those recipes into your notebook. Feedly is a blog reader. CloudMagic is a fantastic email software. Pocket is a read later app. If is a web automation tool, so is Zapier. Then of course you have news outlets and project management applications like Smartsheet and so on and so forth. But pretty much in the App Center there's a little bit of everything, from productivity to all kinds of other really stuff. Physical products as well. Fujitsu's ScanSnap IX500, for instance, is a great tool that has an Evernote edition. You put a document in, it scans both sides almost instantaneously, and then has it synchronized to Evernote. So lots of really great functions within the App Center. Evernote is also is Android Wear and Apple Watch ready, so you get those additions as well. So you can mark things done, see things that are coming up with reminders, and really make a great workflow of the reminder functions within Evernote. So in the time that I had, I decided to talk about sort of three overarching pieces about Evernote: organizing, collaborating, and then publishing with the Evernote platform. So I just wanted to cover Evernote in terms of an organizing tool, because many times what we tend to see with Evernote is that it's sort of a blank canvas. You get Evernote, and then you don't know really quite what to do with it. But if you start to think about Evernote as a series of notebooks that you can physically stack on the table, but that you can then also search digitally, then you start to get a better idea of how it really works. So first and foremost, you need to build a capture habit when it comes to Evernote. That is, whenever you think, gosh, I should keep this, just decide to put it in Evernote, right? Because the more numbers of Post-its and notebooks that you have sitting around, I'm not looking at any one particular person in the room, the more you have, more places you have to put things, the less likely you are to be able to aggregate that on the fly and to know what it is that you need to find, know where it is that you need to find something, okay? So using Evernote as just a capture tool, I'm going to talk about it in all these ways and wanting you to use it cohesively, but really the recommendation is to use it in the areas in which you feel weakest or feel strongest, because you're going to get the most benefit from it from the start in that way. So if you feel like you get the most benefit from shoring up a weakness, then you're going to see Evernote excel there. If you see it where you're already strong but you just don't have a tool for that, a digital tool for that, then Evernote's going to be able to satisfy you there, and you're going to get the most bang for your buck, and then you can shore up the weaknesses later. So I just like the capture habit concept. Whatever it is I need to capture, Evernote's the first place it's going to go, because I just know that's where my brain is. The rest of my mind is in there, and I don't have to think about it anymore. Because if I need to find it again, I just search, and it's there. Or I've structured it in a way that makes it work for me. So I lift out one item here. I'm going to talk about tags also. But Evernote is designed, again, like I said, think about a set of notebooks where you write in each of those notebooks, and each of those notebooks is a particular topic or area of your life. So in this particular case, podcast, name of your podcast or the name of your blog, and that's a notebook. And each sheet in your notebook can hold anything digital. So it can hold text, it can hold video, it can hold a zip file, it can hold a Microsoft Word document. It integrates with Google Drive, so you can throw a Google Drive link in there, and it'll show the Google Drive document, so you can link back out to it to edit. And so you could pretty much put whatever you want in the notes. Basically, the pages are these digital renders of whatever you want, right? And you put those sheets into your notebook, and then you're able to stack them. So you can put them in a stack, right? So you can have your podcast stack. And so I typically recommend you have, your blog notebook, then you have maybe drafts or, episodes in progress, ones that you're scripting or otherwise. Then you might have one that's reference, so podcast reference, and so on and so forth. And now you have these, people have guest blogs. You can have a guest posts notebook. And so now you have a series of notebooks, and all you do is put them under one stack, and now you're able to look at them all in that context of having, okay, this is all podcast stuff, all right? And so you can shrink it and expand it and have that information connected together. Tags are special. Sure, question.
Sorry, I have gone back and forth on Evernote and OneNote for years, and I've stuck with OneNote because of being able to create subsections. I didn't know about stacks, and I'm looking at the app right now. How do you do stacks?
Yeah, sure. So
that might fix it.
Yeah, so on the desktop app, you actually create the stack. Okay, because you have to actually drag one notebook on top of the other notebook, and then it will actually create and it'll basically say, stack name, and then you'll basically create that stack.
Okay.
Once you've created the stack, you can only have one stack, so you can't have two sets of stack or nested stacks. You can only have one stack, one set of notebooks, right? And then you can create multiple stacks, but only you can't nest one stack under another. So, if you have podcast, right? Now you have podcast, and then you have the podcast where you've published your posts. Right. You have that notebook, and then you have reference, and you have guest blogs, whatever else notebooks you have, and then you have that underneath. And so you're capable of moving those notebooks so that they are wherever you want. So if you want your guest blog posts at the very bottom, or your reference all the way at the bottom, you can actually organize that in whatever way you want. Once you've done that, though, you can actually add, on the mobile device, you can add any notebook to a stack and move it around.
You just have to create the initial stack.
You have to create the initial stack on the desktop, at least as far as I'm aware. Otherwise, it should be...
I'm seeing where it's like show stacks, but I'm not finding anything to create.
Yeah, so if you're in notebooks and you're in the notebook itself, then yeah, I'm almost certain that you have to do it on the desktop.
Okay.
But
Okay. Yeah, that was something that's always been a sticking point for me with Evernote.
yeah, I'm almost certain you have to create it on the desktop version.
Cool.
Yeah, I think you
Nice.
do. But once you do, you'll see the stack, and then you're able to then move them around and add a notebook to a stack and move it around in the organization of it. So,
Okay.
but it's a really, really powerful tool in terms of being able to create that stack. Stacks cannot be shared. Notebooks can be shared and individual notes can be shared, but stacks cannot. They are structured within your own system and cannot be shared as of right now. The tags now. So this ends up being a conversation of how you organize things to work best for you. You can either do this from a folder perspective, which is notebooks, and the traditional perspective that we understand when we look at, say, a Windows or Mac computer, Apple Finder, or Windows Explorer, where you have a folder structure, and it's hierarchical and so on and so forth. In essence, you could have one notebook in Evernote and literally use tags as a complete architecture for going ahead and searching for everything and organizing everything. You can use all notebooks and stacks and no tags and be just as fine, okay? So it ends up being how you actually want to manufacture these things. You're limited to a certain number of notebooks and a certain number of stacks and a certain number of tags within the Evernote system, depending upon your level of subscription and the system itself. So you just have to be aware of that. It's more than most people would ever create, but there have been a few people who have reached literally the tag limit or the notebook limits. 255 notebooks, for instance, is a lot of notebooks, but that's the limit Evernote has imposed upon you. And there have been people who have said, like, I create a notebook for every project, and now I've exceeded that number. So there are people who have done it. I don't know why you would have 255 notebooks, but think about that in the physical perspective. That's a lot of notebooks. So anyway, you start to think about how you're going to actually organize Evernote: notes, notebooks, stacks, and tags. Right? I'm not going to try and go into many more detail than that, other than to say you've got to decide on how it's organized, think about it, and then use it consistently. Right? So it could work for you and not for anyone else, but as long as you use it consistently, you're good to go. Okay? So it's all about consistent use of those. So don't start tagging things that belong in a notebook and leaving it in somewhere else in Evernote. Really think about, okay, if I'm always going to tag this as draft and leave that in the notebook that's for your podcast, great, that's fine. Right? So if you tag things by the state in which they are, tagging as draft, tagged as recorded but unpublished, recorded raw, and then edited, and then scheduled to publish, published, and those are what tell you what episodes are in flux. Great. Or you can create a notebook structure, putting notes in the notebook where they are in the stage toward production. But don't try to do both of those, because that's going to confuse you, right? Is this tagged as draft, or is this in the draft notebook? Then it becomes confusing. So use one and stick to it. All right? Yes?
If you choose one and after 3 months you're like, oh, I get it now, I really should have done it the other way, can you convert?
Absolutely. You can select multiple notes and convert all of those things. Literally, you can move them all from one notebook to another, and you can actually multi-tag. So you can select a series of notes, tag them all as one thing, and then go on with your day. Okay? Yeah. So you can always use multi-selection to be able to do that. The only problem is if you delete things and then purge your trash. That's the one thing you can't do. And if you delete a notebook, notebooks are permanent deletions. So the notes of a notebook that's been deleted will move to the trash bin. They're not deleted, they're moved to the trash bin, and the notebook goes away. So whatever modifications you've made to that notebook, which aren't really many modifications, that is sharing and the title. That's pretty much the only two modifications you can make to a notebook. Those go away. So you have to recreate the notebook. That notebook now does not exist anymore. In the background, Evernote creates a special ID for that notebook. So if you share that with anyone else, it's gone. And if you recreate it with the same name, it's still a different ID. So there's that little function. But you can still capture the notes that have been deleted and move them back. Next is building workflows. So if you're going to organize for process, decide on what the big stages of publishing are for you with your podcast. So you can decide, okay, first I come up with an idea, right? So I might have some ideation process. Then I go ahead and move that ideation process to organizing. Then I decide on, based on what I've researched, so I have some research time, I organize that research. I then come up with a draft. I then maybe script it for the podcast. I then record it. Maybe I bring in some collaborators. We go into editing once the final raw audio is done, and I'm going to have some editing time. Then I'm going to schedule it for publication, and then I'm going to publish it, and then I'm going to syndicate that out to social media and to wherever else I send it by email and otherwise. So you have these natural, points. Decide on what that workflow is and how it looks matched to your notes, notebooks, and stacks. So for example, with blogging, for instance, I tend to move notes from one notebook to another because it's just very easy for me to think, oh, okay, now this belongs in that notebook. And it's just a nice flow, sort of like Trello, right? On a Trello board, if anybody knows what Trello is, it's sort of Kanban style, sort of moving the nuggets from one place to another, right? It's like almost like a conveyor belt. And it feels like a physical movement for me as opposed to changing a tag, which doesn't do very much for me. I guess it's not enough of a dopamine kick to make me feel benefited for, but I feel like if I moved it from notebook to notebook, I've done myself a service. Next is getting to know the search. So search is very different on desktop and mobile for Evernote. So for example, some things are static searches, some things are Boolean. Evernote has a wonderful set of help articles on how search actually works on desktop and mobile. The only thing I can tell you is, in this short time, is that they're different. So just be aware that they're different. Know that you can usually find almost everything that you need within either search, but there's once in a while when you're going to search for a PDF that isn't properly OCR'd in your eyes, because Evernote doesn't OCR everything within a PDF document, or sometimes an image. You think your handwritten text is really wonderful and beautiful, but it's really tough to identify some handwritten notes, and therefore those words won't always be searchable. Again, I'm still always astonished that some of the things that Evernote can find, even when my handwritten notes I still do old-style cursive. I could have been a Gregorian, like a monk in a prior age, but I still do long handwritten text, and my cursive is typically picked up by Evernote fairly well. Again, you would imagine that it wouldn't do cursive at all, but sometimes it picks it up and it knows. And I'm usually pretty astonished when that happens. Jonathan?
Just thinking like if I wanted to maybe write something very legible, like a little tag, and then just do my scribbles after, just probably won't pick that up as much as I try. If I really want to make this beginning like very. That's
definitely an advanced function that I coach people on, which is if you're going to do it in cursive or if you're going to have really bad handwriting, at the bottom of every page or the top of every page, just like take that few moments to write 2 to 3 words. And really, that's all it needs is 2 to 3 words that are keywords for being able to be indexed by the Evernote tool. Evernote takes 4 hours to index a PDF, so it could take up to 4 hours for a PDF to be imaged and OCR'd, and that's the same thing with some images. It can take some time. They prioritize premium users over Plus and Basic, so just know that if you're a premium user, you'll get that first and then otherwise. So sometimes people say, oh, I put a note in my Evernote and it's not finding it, and it's like, well, you put it in there 5 minutes ago. It takes time for the servers to go ahead and index it. So also be aware of that as well. But yeah, a couple keywords on the page can really go a long way if you have very, very poor handwriting or if you write in another language. So for example, we have a lot of Evernote users. Like I said, we have 200 million users around the world, and many of them obviously are not using Evernote in English. But they may be working with American companies and will list their Evernote account as English, but then write in another language, and they will actually write a few English words as keywords on the pages that are being pulled into Evernote. So that's organizing, and then we come up to collaborating with Evernote. So I really love collaborating with Evernote for a number of reasons, mostly because it gets me to evangelize, to proselytize Evernote to the people with whom I'm working. But you don't actually have to. With Evernote, you're able to share within Evernote. For people who already use Evernote, they're just going to get an Evernote link and be taken to the note in their own system. they'll be taken to actually the web, and they'll be able to go ahead and save that Evernote note to their own notebook for collaboration purposes. And that's the vast majority of ways that people try to share with Evernote. But it doesn't stop there, right? So if you're in Evernote, it gives you a share function. You drop down and you can email to folks and you can send it to them. What they're going to get in an email is a stock email from Evernote that basically says, download Evernote and then access the note. That can be very frustrating for some people because they don't want to install a new piece of software and blah, 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 blah. Enter the copy and paste a public link tool, which is fantastic for that kind of situation where you just want to share data with someone and not actually have to paste it. Now, going back to this, there is an ability within Evernote to actually email a copy of a note. Okay? What that means is it actually pastes the content of the note into the email and does not actually share the note with that person. So you do have that function. So you have that in there. But if you really want to collaborate on the note with that person, there is an ability to do that by emailing the note within Evernote. Then you have the paste a public link. Public link can scare some people from a security perspective. You think, oh my gosh, I'm making this public. These are not indexed links by Google or any other search engine. Okay, so they're non-indexed links, no follow, no index links. But what the public link does is it gives a static page on the internet that anyone with that link can click on and then access that note, so that they can see the information that you're publishing. I do this with I have a guest show, sort of a guest guide. If you're going to be on my podcast, these are really the instructions for how you would do that. And it takes, walks them through sort of basic things. Like you probably don't want to have sugary water before you get on the podcast because of all the phlegm and coughing. It's not really good for people, right? Good microphone suggestions, other things of testing. There's basic things. I just put the link out there, and now I give them the public link, and they can access that information. And the great part is now every time I update my Evernote note, say I come up with a new tidbit I'd like to share with them, the next guest is going to see the updated note, same public link, and I don't have to change anything. The other way that you can share notes is through an email address using work chat, okay? So, for example, I have a colleague where we have an ongoing work chat and we regularly share new notes with one another. And so I can see a string in the thread of all the chats, of the chat thread and all the notes that we've been sharing with one another. So it's very easy just to sort of like share something with her. I know that she has Evernote on her phone and on her desktop. I have it on my phone and my desktop, and we're capable of collaborating together on that.
Does work chat the same as that simple one you mentioned earlier?
Yes, it's the same tool. It's the same tool. And again, it's purely for that simple sharing, simple collaboration.
You would leave it open? You would leave it like open?
It's not actually. It doesn't actually stay. I mean, yes, you can have the window stay open, but I never keep it open.
I was just thinking whenever you mentioned about delete it, everything's gone.
Yeah, you have to actually delete the chat thread altogether. So you have to right-click on the chat thread, delete this conversation, and then it deletes. So it just stays there, and it's just a running conversation. But I've had conversations with her in the work chat, but it's not probably the best place to have an in-depth conversation with her because that's just not where you would have that. And she's actually my collaborator with the Evernote DC user group. So, I'm always talking to her about when the next event's going to be, who's our guest hosts, those kinds of things. That's not stuff I put in the work chat. I'm going to put that in the note and say, check the note. Because if the work chat dies, then so does all of this history of what we talked about. So I never want to do that. But it's easy and really quick for me to share it with her because I know she's an Evernote user. So if you know that person's an Evernote user, work chat's really quick and seamless.
With just on the collaboration, since you mentioned Google before, you say this is a better platform and medium to have a collaborative work experience as opposed to Google Drive, or are they kind of two separate things?
Very, very different animals. For example, if we were working on a very long document that wasn't more project-oriented, so say we were working on an annual report together, that is definitely something where you would want to use Google Drive, Google Docs, and Google Slides, with maybe even Google Sheets and Google Slides, potentially using Microsoft Office 365 and OneDrive connectivity in the background, or if you have an Exchange server using, if you have a SharePoint server using SharePoint as a basis as well. So collaboration and the different sizes of infrastructure in the company is really going to be tantamount. If you're a solopreneur or you're a small office, then you might just have a couple of Evernote Premium user accounts, and that's just enough for you to be able to manage all of those things internally. Remember, you can take a Word document and throw it into Evernote, and it's still a Word document. You open it, it's going to open up Word, you're going to edit it, save, it'll save right back to Evernote within the note and be fully okay. if everyone has that shared access, they can all open up that note with the Word document in it, or PowerPoint presentation, or Keynote, or whatever, and edit it. It'll just save back to Evernote. So you can save it for document storage within a note, but it just depends on how complex you're really trying to get. I think you can do a lot with Evernote alone without ever having a Google Drive. But is that really a reality of the world? Some people use Google, some people use Microsoft, some people are using completely extant tools. Decide on how you're going to operate based on the reality of your own situation. So for example, in my world of work, I have Dropbox, I have Box, I have SugarSync, I have all kinds of other tools that other people would be like, well, why do you use that? And I'm like, because I have clients who use it. So I need to. I just need to be able to collaborate with them, and that's the best way to do it. Would I love to use only Evernote all the time in Google Drive? Yeah, probably. But it's just not going to happen. So I have to have a Microsoft OneDrive account, and people share things with me there, right? I just have to remember to capture those links to those documents so that I can put those in Evernote, because that's where I'm tracking and maintaining the project support. So I know that it's in there, and I know I'm going to click on that link, it's going to take me out to OneDrive, fine, it's there. But Evernote gives me that ability to sort of pull all that collaborative tool and all those collaborative pieces together in one.
Are these notes exportable at all? And if so, in what formats other than PDF?
Sure. So this actually exports in .enex format, which is basically an XML file. You can actually also export it as HTML, and you can actually dump a JSON file through a tool called Everdump. It will basically take the entire database and otherwise and dump it out. Now, the ENEX file, of course, doesn't have the native notes within them. It is literally just an XML file, so it's an index. So very different than an RSS XML file, which would have content. And so you have on your desktop the notes themselves in a database folder, and then the index within Evernote. So you always have to remember you're backing up. If you're going to back up the tool or export it outside of it, you're going to want both of those pieces in order to do so. Okay. There is a wonderful Microsoft OneNote export tool that will import the Evernote database into OneNote. I've heard mixed results with regard to what actually gets, some of the things get purged, right? So nested items, some of the dates get sort of skewed, and so there are some things you need to watch out for.
I was more thinking from a podcaster standpoint. We often start off with some outlines, which then turn into our own show notes, which then turn into the show notes that go into a blog, and trying to get people from their Evernote or their OneNote over to their Byword or their Ulysses to do their markdown, out to WordPress to create their show notes. That's kind of where I was.
I'm going to get to that in a moment, and that's going to because what you're talking about is what I traditionally say to people is, if you're going to try and publish show notes and you're not using Evernote as the backbone to do it, publish it to the public link. Click on the public link, and now you're looking at it in the browser.
Right.
Then you just highlight and copy and paste the text from the browser, and you pretty much have all the code resonant to be able to paste into a WordPress or wherever else you're going to be able to post into. So you can actually take your show notes directly from that public link. Then you stop the public publishing of that link if you don't want it to. So publishing with Evernote comes in a couple of different flavors, and mind you, I don't use Evernote as my publishing platform for a podcast, but I'm going to show you that you can do it. So you can publish either by emailing posts into WordPress. Like I said, you can actually copy the body of a post directly into WordPress by either using the built-in WordPress functionality for emailing into. If you have Jetpack as the plugin within WordPress, you can do that. And then if you're using WordPress.com to host you can go ahead and do that. And since it's such a popular platform, you can do that pretty easily and seamlessly. You can also copy and paste into other blog platforms, and that's what you were just asking about. Basically, what I always say is, don't try and copy and paste from the note itself, because within any editor, you're going to get all kinds of crud attached to it. Okay, so to think of barnacles on the side of a ship, it just picks it up along the way. You don't see it, but it's there. So the goal is to take it into a view where you're going to have the least amount of conflict, and the best way to look at that is within a web browser itself. So I usually say, publish a copy, publish the public link, go to the public link, copy and paste the note, and now paste that into wherever you're going to publish it on your blog or podcast platform. And then finally, you can use a tool called Pistachio. Pistachio is really fantastic, and if I have time, I'll take you all into it. I'm happy to show you around the tool. But Pistachio, what it allows you to do is to actually use an Evernote notebook as a website, and you can actually publish your blogs Notes can be one of two things. It can be a page or a blog post, or a podcast episode in essence. Pistachio posts an RSS feed that has the appropriate media enclosures, so you can actually syndicate your custom domain feed directly into iTunes and any other platforms, Stitcher, Google Play Music, and otherwise. So I really love Pistachio for that reason, and I actually tested it this morning just to make sure it worked, and it does actually validate for the appropriate media enclosure to Apple standards. So Pistachio is great. So what you have is a notebook that you decide to share publicly. You synchronize that with the Pistachio tool, and now you're capable of having a website. So say it's mypodcast.pistachio, and it's POSTAS.TACH.io, and you can custom domain that. I would highly recommend that you custom domain the notebook connection to Pistachio. So now you have mypodcastname.com or whatever it's going to be, right? Now /feed.xml is now your podcast feed, okay? And that's what you're going to use as your RSS feed for purposes of syndicating out. And a note is published just by tagging it as published. So you write up your blog post or you write up your show notes for your podcast, throw up your embed for your audio, and click, tags, published, enter, synchronize, and it becomes a published blog post on Pistachio. If you want something to be a page, you then tag it published and tag it as page. And so now Pistachio knows that's a page you want on the website and becomes a page. They have lots of different custom templates, lots of different templates that you can use that are non-custom, and you can of course edit the CSS in order to make it do whatever you want. But Pistachio basically can turn your Evernote notebook into its own blog or podcast. So it's very, very powerful in that sense. And it's inexpensive, so it's not really like it's a big cost. And I really like it. So what you do is any code that you want in and on the website, you literally just paste the embed code in the note itself. One recommendation that if you do decide to use Pistachio is always simplify formatting for any code that you paste in it. So in Evernote, it has a function that you drop down from the menu for the note format, and you can actually do what's called simplify formatting. And that sometimes if you paste code from a website from one place to another, it gets, again, some of that barnacle. You want to go ahead and simplify format. When you publish to the Pistachio platform, it can then read those code snippets appropriately and render them for you. Okay? So you can use Evernote for publishing directly to the internet, which is really fantastic, and so on and so forth. So I'm happy to answer Q&A. I've got my information on whatever you'd like to. You're happy to tweet at me or email me with questions, and I'm happy to do that as well. Any questions?
Does Evernote have an official podcast?
Evernote does not have a podcast that I'm aware of. Yeah, they have their blog.evernote.com.
Some of they did at one point. Like, this is many moons ago. Because I thought it was so cool because they actually had the CEO, like the main tech guy and the main marketing guy. I'm like, this is how you use podcasting, people.
Yeah. No, they did maybe for a very short period of time, but they don't currently have
That
it.
CEO did a podcast with Ferris.
Phil Libet.
Yeah.
So it's the former CEO right now. Right now, CEO Chris O'Neill.
You mentioned before about a note, then a sheet. Is that the same thing, or is it different, or crossing wires?
Sheet in what sense? Oh, I was relating a note to a sheet of paper,
Okay.
but that it's digital, so you can actually put whatever you want on that sheet of paper. In essence, essence, that's a note. Yeah.
My biggest hurdle with Evernote is kind of the organization, which you touched on. Is there some great hint or tip you can throw out there in terms of tags and notebooks and stacking? I never used tags in anything really.
Then don't use tags now. That ends up being such a bespoke answer for every individual. What I will tell you is that have as many notebooks and stacks as you need, but no more. And just use the organization of the tool to learn how you work. So, it's an ongoing process. You're going to decide, okay, well, I need 3 notebooks. So for example, I have this thing. I decide, what the categories of my life are, and they all fit under those umbrellas across every tool. Calendar to desktop folders, to Evernote, to Gmail labels, to other, Outlook folders. They're all going to be the same. I want to make sure they're cohesive across those, and then everything else can fall underneath it, but I want as few as possible. So that's sort of my answer for that, is to just decide on what that organization and piece is going to be, and then stick with it, but know that you can change. You can change it as you need to. Other questions?
I feel like it's sort of impossibly stupid because they're named notebooks, and this never occurred to me, but actually visualizing notebooks
Yeah.
is not a thing that I've done with my Evernote, but for organizing sake seems very, because I don't use tags either. I'm terrible at keywording things or tagging things, but putting them under and this is a category of this stuff seems really easy. And yeah, despite them being literally named notebooks, I never put that together.
Yeah, the concept is called skeuomorphism, and the idea of taking technology and making it look like real-world physical items. And it makes a lot of sense for you to think about the physical, artifacts in your own life and translating them to how they can work in your digital life, but knowing that it has the flexibility of search and tagging
so that I
and
can
integration.
Very easily get, that doesn't go in that notebook and move it, as opposed to my moleskins that I've been using.
Absolutely.